Hi students, welcome to today's online class. Today I am going to start chapter 8, How do organisms reproduce? It is one of the important lessons. Students, if you remember in the beginning I told you about the life processes, the 6 important characteristics of living things like respiration, nutrition, locomotion, sensation, growth, and reproduction. The first 5 what I told you, they are very important for the organisms to live. If these 5 process does not happen, then the organisms cannot live. But the sixth one, the reproduction, if the reproduction does not have, it doesn't mean that the organism will die. The organism can survive till the death without reproduction. But reproduction is necessary for the life to move on. If I am born and I die, then the life cannot continue. But if I am born, if I don't have children, I can live, it's okay, I can live. It's not that I cannot live without reproducing. But reproducing is important because if I am born and I am dead, the next generation will not come. So reproduction is important to life to move on. Now, let's start today. Today we are going to learn some important definitions about reproduction. So what is reproduction? Process of forming new young ones of similar type of a species, same species, like dog giving birth to same dog only, humans giving birth to humans, like that. So what is reproduction? So these are the images and clips I've took from internet and all to purpose. These are the topic we are going to cover in this. Reproduction, asexual reproduction, what is binary fission, fragmentation, budding, tissue culture, asexual reproduction, about flower, pollination, reproduction in humans, male reproductive system, female reproductive system, contraception, and some MCQs. Why do organisms reproduce? Reproduction is necessary for living things because it makes them or enables them to create offspring and continue their population so that the life moves on. Life is there. It gets on. Something is born and something is death, then the life finishes. If the first bacteria was born and it died there only, then it would have died. The life would have not continued. We would not done evolved. Evolution would not happen. Because the life has to continue, one bacteria became 2. The first cell became 2 cell, daughter cell. So then only the life continue. That is what we call it as reproduction. So reproduction is necessary for living things because it enables them to create offspring and continue their population. Okay. What is the most basic function of reproduction? Reproduction on its most basic level, what happens reproduction means generally we take I giving birth to a child or dog giving birth to a puppy or fish giving birth to a small fish. It happens like that. But inside, if you take a cell, how the cell reproduces itself. Cell divides and reproduces. You all know that. How that happens. There what happened? You all know the cell has nucleus. Inside nucleus, chromosomes are there. Chromosomes are very important and they carry all your blueprint. How your hair should be, how your body should be, what color your skin, what color of your hair, how your eyes should look, how should be your ears, and all those things. Blueprint will be in chromosomes. Chromosomes carry genes. In that genes, you have all the blueprint which you got from 50% from your father and 50% from your mother. So this blueprint of a body design is copied. That we call it as organisms reproduction. From their basic level it happens. Reproduction at its most basic level will involve making copies of the blueprints of body design. A basic event in reproduction is the creation of DNA copy. DNA copy. In genes, there is DNA. DNA, inside DNA, there is genes. So once the DNA copies, the multiplying will happen and the reproduction, it is the reproduction. It gives rise to reproduction. Now, why is DNA copying an essential part of the process of reproduction? Xerox, as you know, one Xerox. 2 Xerox mixed together, one new individual, like father, mother. The child has the characteristics, some of fathers and mothers, but it is different, it is unique, it is not as Xerox as. But sometimes you might have heard your parents or your relatives coming and telling, oh, ಇವನೊಳ್ಳೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ ತಮ್ಮನ ಥರ ಕಾಣಿಸ್ತಾನೆ, ಇವಳು ನಿಮ್ಮ ತಂಗಿ ಥರ, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಅಜ್ಜಿ ಥರ ಕಾಣಿಸ್ತಾಳೆ, ಇವಳು ಕೂದಲು ಆ ಥರ, ಇವಳು ಕಣ್ಣು ಈ ಥರ ಅಂತ ಹೋಲ್ಸೋದನ್ನು ನೋಡಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ದಿಸ್ ಹ್ಯಾಪನ್ಸ್ ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದ DNA copying. So here the DNA is copied and the characteristics are also copied. Chromosome is in the nucleus of a cell contain information of inheritance. Inheritance andre nam parents inda ನಾವು ತಗೊಳ್ಳೋದು. The characteristics which is passed on from our parents to offspring or the children. Inheritance of features from parent to next generation in the form of DNA. The DNA in the cell nucleus is the information source of making proteins. Therefore, a basic event in reproduction is creation of DNA copy for the next generation. If you want, I'll just widen this thing. You can see cell. Inside cell, nucleus. Nucleus has chromosomes. Inside chromosomes, there are DNA. And this DNA copy happens. Next, importance of DNA copying. Why DNA should copy? The importance of DNA copying during reproduction is that it is responsible for the transmission of parent characteristics to offsprings. Like I have eyes like my mother, but I have ears like my father. Or I may be having my body features or face resembling my great grandmother. It may be passed on. So it is responsible for the transmission of parental characteristics to its offsprings. It also leads to certain genetic variations, some changes, there are some similarities and dissimilarities in each of us. We all are same, but still we all are unique, different, individual. See, you got parent 1 and parent 2. So both mix, you have something else. See, you have got 5% from your parent 1, like for mother. From parent you have got 75%. So that there are another chance with these mixing you may get something else like. So these are the important characteristics. Now, what is variation? If I say this is all, you will understand better in heredity and evolution, but still I'll tell you what is variation. Variation is difference. Variation is nothing but difference. Two genes combined together to form a different version of it. Why is variation beneficial to the species but not necessarily for the individual? Variations allow organisms to exist in diverse habitats. Diverse under different habitats, different places only. In the absence of variations, a species may be restricted to particular area. ಈ ಏರಿಯಾಲ್ ಮಾತ್ರನೇ ಸೆಟ್ ಆಗೋದು, ಇಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಇರೋಕ್ಕಾಗೋದು, ಆ ಥರ ಇಟ್ ಮೇ ಬಿ. If this area gets drastically altered due to various natural or man-made causes, the species may be wiped out. ಅದು ತಡ್ಕೊಳಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ. ಎಲ್ಲದಕ್ಕೂ ಅಡ್ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಆಗೋವಂಥ ಕೆಪಾಸಿಟಿ ವೇರಿಯೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಇದ್ದರೆ ಒಳ್ಳೆಯದು. ಇಲ್ಲ ನಮ್ಮ ಅಮ್ಮ ಥರ ನನಗೂ ಒಂದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಶೀತ ಆದರೆ ನೆಗಡಿ ಆಗಿಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ, ಶೀತ ಆಗಿಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ ಅಂದರೆ ಅದು ಒಂದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಚೇಂಜಸ್ ಆಗಿದ್ರೆ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಅಪ್ಪಂದು ಕ್ಯಾರೆಕ್ಟರಿಸ್ಟಿಕ್ಸ್ ಸೇರಿ ಸಮ್ ಚೇಂಜಸ್ ವಿಲ್ ಹ್ಯಾಪನ್. So students, I was telling you about the reproduction, what is DNA copying, what are the essentials of, what is the necessity of DNA copying, everything we saw. Now, let me tell you about some importance of reproduction. It is significance of reproduction, I can say. It helps in the continuation of life. It prepares the species. Different species are evolved. Evolution happens like our ancestors and monkeys' ancestors are same. We evolved. Monkeys evolved that way, and we evolved like human beings. Like evolution also happens. It replaces one living being replaces the other one. And also variation, differences will be there because of this reproduction, and replication or copy of DNA will happen, and inherited characteristics, heredity, the characteristics which are inherited, passed on from parents to offspring, moves on the characteristics. So in reproduction, there are two different types of reproduction which you have already studied in 8th standard: asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. Obviously, let me give some difference later on. I'll give you just information. Sexual reproduction, it happens with single parent. Sexual reproduction, it happens with single parent, whereas asexual reproduction happens with two parents must be there for sexual reproduction. First, let us see asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction, what is asexual reproduction? The type of reproduction that allows new generations to be created from a single individual or single parent is known as asexual reproduction. Now, there are different types of asexual reproduction. There are varieties of different methods of asexual reproduction. Methods of asexual reproduction. The different methods of asexual reproduction are fission. Fission is one becoming two. Fission, remember, F-I-S-S-I-O-N. One splitting into two is called fission. One becoming two is called fission. Whereas two becoming one is called fusion. That will come later on, I'll tell you. So this is fission. One cell dividing into two daughter cells, we call it as fission. Like, next, budding. Budding means an organism, it has a small bedding and that bedding itself becomes an organism. Spore formation. Spore formation, there it forms a small, very granule, very, like I can say, very small, guscase, like very small granules which forms like foams, and from spores from that the organisms are formed. Next, regeneration. Regeneration. For example, if you have observed, I will tell you in detail, if some part of the organism is cut, that organism regrows. That is called regeneration. Next, fragmentation. Each piece of an individual becomes a new individual. That is fragmentation. Next, vegetative propagation. It only happens for plants. Now, let us look at the next one. 1 minute, just see this. Activity 8.1. Dissolve about 10 gram of sugar in 200 ml of water. Take 20 ml of this solution in a test tube and add a pinch of yeast granules to it. Put a cotton plug on the mouth of the test tube and keep it in warm place. After 1 or 2 hours, put a small drop of yeast culture from the test tube on a slide and cover it with a cover slip. Observe the slide under a microscope. See, here it is showing formation of yeast cells can be seen. Some of them may show chain budding. Budding is happening. It is happening budding. That I'll tell you later on. These are just examples. Activity 2. Wet a slice of, you might have kept bread for so many days. After 3-4 days, if you have observed the kept, if it is there, bread is kept, you can see some black boost formation there. That we call it as mold, bread mold. See, dark place. Observe the surface of the slice with a magnifying glass. Record. See, during the week and observing the surface of the slice with a magnifying glass, a layer of white cotton-like moss is seen covering the surface of the slice. Area of white mass coverage found to be increasing on subsequent days. After a week, layer of white cotton like mass turns black, showing formation of sporangia or spores. This is called as bread mold. It is a type of fungus. Next, how do organisms reproduce by fission? What is fission? First point. Fission is a form of sexual reproduction in which an organism divide into 2 or more parts. 1 becoming 2, 2 becoming 4, or 1 becoming 4. One ಎರಡು ಪಾರ್ಟ್ ಆದರೆ ಅದನ್ನು ಬೈನರಿ, ಬೈ ಮೀನ್ಸ್ ಟು, ಬೈನರಿ ಫಿಷನ್ ಅಂತೀವಿ. ಒನ್ ಬಿಕಮಿಂಗ್ ಮೆನಿ ಈಸ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಆಸ್ ಮಲ್ಟಿಪಲ್ ಫಿಷನ್. ಸಿ ಹಿಯರ್, one cell is there, the one bacteria is there, it is divided and it becomes 2. That is called fission. Fission is a form of sexual reproduction in which an organism is divided into 2 or more parts. Binary splits into 2 new organisms. One organism dividing or splitting into 2 organisms is called. That example is amoeba. The best example is amoeba. Amoeba is reproduces by fission. How is the fission method of reproduction different in different organisms? See, in unicellular organism, fission leads to the creation of new individuals. Many bacteria and protozoa simply split into 2 equal halves during cell division. In organisms such as amoeba, the splitting of the two cells during division can take place in any plane. In leishmania, fission occurs in a definite orientation. ಅದೇ ಥರ ಒಂದೊಂದು ಆರ್ಗ್ಯಾನಿಸಮ್ ಒಂದೊಂದು ಥರ ಫಿಷನ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಒಂದು ತುದಿ ಮಾತ್ರ ಇಂದ ಡಿವೈಡ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, ಒಂದು ಫುಲ್ ಸೆಲ್ಲೇ ಎರಡು ಆರ್ಗ್ಯಾನಿಸಮ್ ಆಗಿಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ, ಇಲ್ಲ ಒಂದು ಪಾಯಿಂಟಿಂದ ಡಿವಿಷನ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ನಾವು observe a permanent slice of amoeba under a microscope. Similarly, observe another permanent slice of amoeba showing binary fission. ನೋಡಿ ಇಲ್ಲಿ first slide is about amoeba. Amoeba cell having normal cytoplasm. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನೀವು pseudopodia ಕೂಡ ಇದೆ ನೋಡಿ, ಎಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲೆ pseudopodia is formed. Here you can see how nucleus amoeba is splitting into two. Second slide ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನೀವು ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಪಿಕ್ಚರಲ್ಲಿ ಹಿಂಗೆ ಎಳೆ ಥರ ದಾರ ಬಂದಿದೆ ನೋಡಿ. There you can see the amoeba becoming into two, and here it is already divided. Next, binary fission ಇದೆ. The process by which an organism reproduces asexually by dividing into two cells from a single cell is called binary fission. Single organism or single amoeba or anything you can say. So what is binary fission? The process by which an organism reproduces asexually by dividing into two cells from a single cell is called binary fission. One becoming two is called binary. Now, binary fission in leishmania. ನೋಡಿ ಇಲ್ಲಿದೆ leishmania ಅಲ್ಲಿ. In leishmania, binary fission occurs in a definite orientation. ನೋಡಿ ಯಾವ ಥರ ಆಗ್ತಿದೆ, ಒಂದು ನಾರ್ಮಲ್ ಆಗಿತ್ತು, ಅಲ್ಲಿ ತುದಿನಲ್ಲಿ it started becoming two, nucleus became two. Next, after that, last you can see it is divided into two. ಇದೇ ಥರ one becoming two is called binary. Multiple, one organism becoming so many together is called multiple. The process by which an organism reproduces asexually by dividing into many daughter cells simultaneously is called multiple fission. Here you can say splits into more than two. Multiple fission is splits into more than two. For binary fission, you remember amoeba. Amoeba becomes one becomes two. Binary fission example is amoeba. Whereas multiple fission example is plasmodium. The organism which causes malaria, we call it as plasmodium. That plasmodium is the best example for multiple fission. Now here let us see the difference between binary and multiple. In binary fission, the parent organism splits to form two new organisms. In multiple fission, the parent organism splits to form many new organisms at the same time. Here, binary fission takes place in favorable environmental condition, whereas multiple fission happens in unfavorable. Here, binary fission, it takes place in organisms like amoeba, paramecium, whereas here multiple fission, it takes place in organisms like plasmodium. Next one, how do yeast reproduce? Yeast puts out small buds-like structure, ಒಂಥರ ಮೊಗ್ ಥರ ತುದಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಬರುತ್ತೆ, small bud-like structure that separates and go further into formation, like formation of a small budding. And that budding itself becomes a new organism. For example, imagine on your head, on your body, you have one pimple. That pimple becomes big and it goes out and it becomes one of you, like that. That is called as yeast. Example, ತೋರಿಸ್ತೀನಿ ನಾನು ನಿಮಗೆ. ಅವಾಗ I showed you that time. Just let me go back. How yeast. Here you can see the yeast. This is fission. Here yeast bedding. This is called as budding. As I told you, this is called as budding, chain budding. One budding ಮೇಲೆ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಸರಿ 2-3 buddings together will be formed, and that is called chain budding. Okay, now let's get back to our next class. Okay, we finished budding. Budding, I told you, yeast, best examples for yeast budding is yeast. Next is Spirogyra. Here you can see a organism which is Spirogyra. It is a type of paramecium, porifera. It is a type of porifera. Here you can see a long slant like structure, and it has fragments. ಪಟ್ಟಿ ಪಟ್ಟಿ ಥರ ಇದೆ, ಒಂದೊಂದು ಫ್ರಾಗ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್. ಈಚ್ ಫ್ರಾಗ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಬಿಕಮ್ಸ್ ನೀವು ಕಟ್ಟಾದರೆ ಈಚ್ ಫ್ರಾಗ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಬಿಕಮ್ಸ್ ಅ ಆರ್ಗ್ಯಾನಿಸಮ್. ಸ್ಪೈರೋಗೆರಾ ಫಿಲಮೆಂಟ್ ಕನ್ಸಿಸ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಮೆನಿ ಸೆಲ್ಸ್. ದೀಸ್ ಸೆಲ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ ಅಟ್ಯಾಚ್ಡ್ ಇನ್ ಲೀನಿಯರ್ ಫ್ಯಾಷನ್ ಟು ಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಎ ಫಿಲಮೆಂಟ್ ಆರ್ ಫ್ರಾಗ್ಮೆಂಟ್. ಸೊ fragmentation is a form of asexual reproduction in which an organism is split into pieces like fragments. Each of these pieces or fragments develop into a mature, fully grown individual. Nodi, fragmentation. This is planaria. It is one of the organism that is cut into 3 pieces, and each piece became an organism. This is called as fragmentation. Each piece becomes one organism. For example, now my hand is cut, and with my hand all of my body is formed. Full body is formed. One piece from one piece of the body. Next, regeneration. Regeneration is a process in which an individual which has got cut or broke up into many pieces grow into separate individual. For example, simple animals like hydra and planaria, same thing, it is same. One part of the, so for regeneration, best example is, you might have seen lizards losing their tail. After a few days, tail kattagi ello bidirutte. After a few days, you observe, it will get a small tail. That is called regeneration. Some of the organisms we humans don't have. If our hand is cut, we don't regrow our hand. But some of the organisms, animals, especially frog, amphibians, reptiles have this, some of them have this speciality of regeneration. See, regeneration is a process in which an individual which has got cut or broken up into many pieces grow into separate individuals. Ability to regenerate whole body with body parts. One body part you can grow full body part. For example, I told you Malamam's hand, if my hand is broken off, from that hand full of my another Malamam will come off. That is called as regeneration. One important reason, regeneration is not form of reproduction. Regeneration is not as same as reproduction, since most organisms would not normally depend on being cut up to be able to reproduce. ಮತ್ತೆ regeneration ಆಗೋದಲ್ಲ, ಯಾಕೆ reproduction ಮಾಡಬೇಕು? One body can be, one animal can be cut into many parts and many organisms will come. For reproduction, you cannot cut and become reproduction. It is a special ability for few animals only. Can you think of reasons why more complex organisms cannot give rise new individuals? Why can't my body part become one organism itself? Agala. Small organisms matra capacity, like planaria and hydra matra, they only have this regeneration. Multicellular organisms cannot reproduce by regeneration because they are not simple random collection of cells. Simple multicellular organisms possess special types of tissues which have the potential to grow into a new organisms. But complex multicellular organisms have no such specialized cell. Nammalli a specialized cell no illa. If it was like that, we would have grown. ಎಲ್ಲ ಆದ್ರೂ ಈಗ ಸ್ಟೆಮ್ ಸೆಲ್ಸ್ ತೊಗೊಂಡು ನಾವು ಎಲ್ಲ ಆರ್ಗನ್ನ ಗ್ರೋ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ ಲ್ಯಾಬಲ್ಲಿ. ಆ ಒಂದು ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೆರಿಮೆಂಟು ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ನಡೀತಾ ಇದೆ. So if we are able to grow that body parts, it will be so useful. Liver, who doesn't have liver, we can grow liver and give. Whose kidney has spoiled, we can give kidney. Like that, transplantation can be done. Reproduction versus regeneration. Reproduction, it is a process in which individual organisms give rise to new one either by sexual or asexual method. But regeneration, it is a process by which new organism develop from parts of the parent body. Parent body in the one part in the ostagagadana, we call it as regeneration. Next, budding. What is budding? The type of asexual reproduction in which a bud is formed which develops into tiny individual. It detaches from the parent body upon maturation and develops into a new organism. Hydra. ಈಗಾಗಲೇ ಇರೋದು ಒಂದು ಹೊಸ ಒಂದು ಏನೋ ಒಂದು ಔಟರ್ ಗ್ರೋತ್ ಆಗಿ ಔಟರ್ ಗ್ರೋತ್ ಅಗೇನ್ ಇಟ್ ಬಿಕಮ್ಸ್ ಅ ನ್ಯೂ ಇಂಡಿವಿಜುವಲ್. ಸೊ ದಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಇಸ್ ಹೈಡ್ರಾ. ಬಡ್ಡಿಂಗಿಗೆ ಹೈಡ್ರಾ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಈಸ್ಟ್. ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ ಒನ್ ಕಮ್ಸ್ ಸ್ಪೋರ್ ಫಾರ್ಮೇಷನ್ ಹೇಳಿದೆ, ಅದೊಂದು ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಕೊಡಲಿಲ್ಲ ನಾನು. ಸ್ಪೋರ್ ಫಾರ್ಮೇಷನ್ ಅಂದರೆ ಬ್ರೆಡ್ ಮೌಲ್ಡ್ ಹೇಳಿದ್ನಲ್ಲ, ಬ್ರೆಡ್ಡು ಮೇಲೆ ಅದು ಬ್ಲ್ಯಾಕ್ ಕಲರ್ ಮೌಲ್ಡ್ ಆಗಿ ಅದ್ರ ಸಣ್ಣ like very minute granules like spores are formed, which spread, and each spore becomes a new organism. Now, vegetative propagation. What is vegetative propagation? For example, you might have, if we have to get some plants, we will put the seed. Mango, if you want to grow a mango plant, we will eat the mango and put that mango seed inside the soil, you will get a new plant. But if you want a ginger, or if you want a potato, do you have any seed for potato? Or carrot? Do you have any seed for carrot? No. What you will do for that? It itself, ginger, you will place one piece of ginger and from that only it grows. So the growth of plants other than seeds with their body parts like root, stem, leaf, with that if they grow, we call it as vegetative propagation. Vegetative propagation is any form of asexual reproduction occurring in a plant in which a new plant grows from a parent plant or grows from a part of a parent plant. ಯಾವುದೋ ಒಂದು parent plant ಪಾರ್ಟಿಂದ ಅದು ಬೆಳೆಯೋದನ್ನು ರೂಟ್ ಹಾಕಿ ಮತ್ತೆ ಬೆಳೆಸೋದು, ಅಥವಾ ಸ್ಟೆಮ್ಮಿಂದ ಬೆಳೆಸೋದು, ಅಥವಾ ಲೀಫಿಂದ ಬೆಳೆಯೋದನ್ನು ವಿ ಕಾಲ್ ಇಟ್ ಆಸ್ ವೆಜಿಟೇಟಿವ್ ಪ್ರೊಪಗೇಷನ್. For example, process by which new plant can be obtained from vegetative body plant parts in the ಹೊಸ ಪ್ಲಾಂಟ್ ಬಂದರೆ we call it as ಅದು asexual reproduction. ಅದೇ seed ಇಂದ ಬಂದರೆ it is sexual reproduction. By stem ಇಂದ ಬರುತ್ತೆ, by roots, by leaf. See, one part is cut here, you can see in the picture. For example, one part is cut and it is put into the pot. Again, that becomes a new part. That is called as vegetative propagation. Advantages of vegetative propagation. Plants raised by vegetative propagation can bear flowers and fruits fast, very early than the normal one. It makes possible the propagation of plants such as banana, orange, rose and jasmine that have lost the capacity to produce seeds. All plants produced are genetically similar. They all have the same characteristics of the parents. Now, I told you example of potato. Potato with notches or buds show the growth of a new plants, whereas the other pieces of potato do not show growth. You can see here in a potato, if you see some knot like structure will be there, that we call it as eye. If you put that part in the mud, new potato will come. But the other part of the potato, it won't work as reproductive organ. That is the next. Now, the piece which has left. Now, one more thing, if you remember this pudina. For pudina, what you will do? You just take one or two pudina plant and put it inside. It will grow by itself. Some other will grow off. The piece which has at least one leaf develops fresh leaves and branch because money plant leaf has axillary bud between leaves and stem which develops into a new plant. This is not necessary. Okay. Brahma Kamala. ಬ್ರಯೋಫೈಲಮ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ, ಅದು ಹೂವು ಎಲೆಯಿಂದ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. Buds produced in the notches along the leaf margin of bryophyllum fall on the soil and develop into new plants. See, so beautifully you can see this here. Each leaf in the one leaf put it becomes new plant. For example is Brahma Kamala or bryophyllum. Next is tissue culture. A tissue culture is the cultivation of a plant through the use of cutting or other plant tissue. Plant tissue na tagondu adanna growth ಮಾಡಿ ಅದರಿಂದ different plants na grow ಮಾಡೋದನ್ನ we call it as tissue culture. For example, ನಾವೀಗ ವೆಜಿಟೇಟಿವ್ ಪ್ರೊಪಗೇಷನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬೈ ಸ್ಟೆಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಗ್ರೋ ಮಾಡೋದು ಪೊಟ್ಯಾಟೊ, ಬೈ ರೂಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಗ್ರೋ ಮಾಡೋದು ಕ್ಯಾರೆಟ್, ಸ್ವೀಟ್ ಪೊಟ್ಯಾಟೊ, ಗೆಣಸು, ಬೈ ಲೀಫ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬ್ರಯೋಫೈಲಮ್ ನಾನು ಹೇಳಿದೆ ಅದು ಯಾವ್ದು ಅಂತ. ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್, new plants are grown by removing tissue or separating cells from the growing tip of a plant. The cells are then placed in an artificial medium where they divide rapidly to form a small group of cells or callus. The callus is transferred to another medium containing hormones for growth and differentiation. The plantlets are then placed in the soil so that they can grow into mature plants. See how it is called? This plant tissue. Again, some part tissue is formed from a single cell. Plant tissue is from that callus is formed. Then it will have its roots and then it is placed. That is how the tissue culture works. Advantages of tissue culture. Using tissue culture, many plants can be grown from one parent. Disease free irodu ಒಳ್ಳೆ ಪ್ಲಾಂಟ್ಸ್ನ ಆಯ್ದುಬಿಟ್ಟು ನಾವು we can grow many once for all together. Next, sporangia. Tiny blob on stick structures that involved in reproduction are called sporangia. They contain cells or spores. Spores ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಹೇಳಿಲ್ಲ ನಾನು, ಅದನ್ನು ನೆನೆಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೇಳಿದೆ. Spores develop into new plants. Benefits of producing spores, it's not necessary. Now, this is all about asexual reproduction. There are different types of asexual reproduction. Fission, examples, amoeba. Budding, example, yeast and hydra. Fragmentation, spirogyra. Regeneration, planaria. All these things, if you remember, it will be easy. Fission is one becoming into two is called binary fission. One becoming into many is called multiple fission. Budding is a formation of a bud-like outgrowth in an organism which becomes the new organism. Fragmentation, each piece or each fragment becomes a new organism. We call it as fragmentation. Regeneration, from one part of the body, whole organism is produced. That is called regeneration. In plants, there are asexual reproduction is called vegetative propagation or vegetative reproduction. So in that, it can be grown by stem, by root and by leaf. And there is artificial and natural. Artificial vegetative propagation ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕಟ್ಟಿಂಗ್, ಲೇಯರಿಂಗ್, ಗ್ರಾಫ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಅಂತೀವಿ. ಕಟ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಅಂದರೆ ಈಗ ರೋಸ್ಗಳದ್ದು ನೀವು ಗಮನಿಸಿರ್ಬೋದು. ಇಫ್ ರೋಸ್ ಪ್ಲಾಂಟ್ ಇಸ್ ದೇರ್, ರೋಸ್ ಆರ್ ಹೈಬಿಸ್ಕಸ್, you cut the stem and you put that stem in a new plant, you will get a new one. Whereas layering for jasmine, ಮಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಹೂವನ್ನು ಬೆಳಿಬೇಕಂದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಸುಮ್ಮನೆ ಕಡ್ಡಿ ತೆಗೆದುಬಿಟ್ಟು ಸುಮ್ಮನೆ ಇಟ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಬೆಳೆಯಲ್ಲ. ಅದು ನಾವು ರೌಂಡಿಗೆ ಸುತ್ತಬಿಟ್ಟು ಮಣ್ಣಲ್ಲಿ ಊತ್ಬಿಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಲೇಯರಿಂಗ್. After that only you can grow jasmine. That is called layering. Next one is grafting. You might have observed in 8th or something, if first language or second language, I don't remember, there was one person who grew so many types of fruits in one plant, so many types of flowers in one plant. See, for example, you might have observed one plant will have pink rose, red rose, white rose, all those things. That happens with the help of grafting. If we take one plant of red rose plant, cut the stem and keep other part of the white rose plant stem and join both of them, in future they will be growing both this and that, both. That is called grafting. So now let's go to the sexual reproduction. So what is tissue culture? I told you that is method of raising new plants from small pieces of plant tissue over a culture or synthetic method by supplying growth hormones. This is called as significance. I told you. Now, sexual reproduction. What is sexual reproduction? The type of reproduction that depends on the involvement of two individuals before a new generation can be created is called sexual reproduction. ಈ sexual reproductionಗೆ 2 parents ಬೇಕು. One parent ಇಂದ egg, one parent ಇಂದ sperm. ಇವೆರಡೂ ಕಂಬೈನ್ ಆದ್ರೇ sexual reproduction ಆಗಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ. Sexual reproduction, it is nothing but combining DNA of two different individuals and form separate DNA. ಇದರ ಬೇಸಿಕ್ ಫೀಚರ್ಸ್ ಏನು? ವಾಟ್ ಆರ್ ದ ಬೇಸಿಕ್ ಫೀಚರ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಸೆಕ್ಷುವಲ್ ರಿಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್? 2 parents, biparental, it has 2 parents. It also happens with the help of cell division. Here gametes are involved. What is this gametes ಅಂದರೆ ನಮ್ಮ ನಾರ್ಮಲ್ ಸೆಲ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ ಅಲ್ವಾ, ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ರೆಡ್ ಬ್ಲಡ್ ಸೆಲ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ, ಆಮೇಲೆ ಮಸಲ್ ಸೆಲ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ, ಸ್ಕಿನ್ ಸೆಲ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ, ಆಲ್ ದೋಸ್ ಥಿಂಗ್ ಸೆಲ್ಸ್. ಅದೇ ಥರ ನಮ್ಮ ರಿಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಟಿವ್ ಸೆಲ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ, ದಟ್ ವಿ ಕಾಲ್ ಇಟ್ ಆ್ಯಸ್ gametes. The reproductive cells are called gametes. Here ಆ ಒಂದು ರಿಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ಗೆ ಸ್ಪೆಷಲ್ ಸೆಲ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ, ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಆಸ್ gametes. Here fertilization occurs. I told you that time fission ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳಿದೆ, one dividing or splitting into 2 is called fission ಅಂತ. ಬಟ್ ಇಲ್ಲಿ a parent's gamete, a father gamete and a mother gamete. Mother's reproductive cell and father's reproductive cell combine, fuse together, come together is called fuse. Fusion forms a new cell which is called as zygote, that I will tell you in the future. So it helps in the evolution, and also it is give rises for the variations, differences. So now let us see what is significance, what is the importance of sexual reproduction. In asexual reproduction there are very little variations, difference ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಅದು ಹೇಗಿದೆ ಹಂಗೆ ಪೇರೆಂಟ್ ಥರನೇ ಒಂದು ಆರ್ಗ್ಯಾನಿಸಮ್ ಇರೋಕ್ಕೆ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಸಾಧ್ಯತೆ ಇದೆ. ಬಟ್ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಪೇರೆಂಟ್ಗಿನ್ನ ವಿಭಿನ್ನವಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ, ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ಇಬ್ಬರು ಇಂಡಿವಿಜುವಲ್ದು ಕ್ಯಾರೆಕ್ಟರಿಸ್ಟಿಕ್ಸ್ ವಿ ಆರ್ ಕ್ಯಾರಿಯಿಂಗ್, ಸೊ ಇಟ್ ಬಿಕಮ್ಸ್ ಡಿಫ್ರೆಂಟ್. This reduces the chance of survival and evolution of species. But in sexual reproduction, these variations are more because of combining of variations. ಎರಡು different variations combine ಆಗಿ ಇದೇ ಒಂದು different variation ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. Therefore, chances of survival and evolution of species are more in organisms produced by sexual reproduction. Advantages of variation. See, variations are useful for ensuring the survival of the species. How does DNA copying mechanism allow variation? DNA copying, as it is ಇವ್ರದ್ದು ಅವ್ರದ್ದು ಸೇಮ್ DNA ಎರಡು ಕಂಪೈನ್ ಆದಾಗ ಅದು ಹೆಂಗೆ ಕಾಪಿ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ನೋಡೋಣ ಬನ್ನಿ. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ DNA copying is not absolutely accurate, ಪರ್ಫೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿರಲ್ಲ. Each new variation is made in a DNA copy that already has variation accumulated from previous generations. ಈಗಾಗಲೇ ಇರೋ DNA, ಅಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ ಇರೋ DNA 50%, ಅಪ್ಪ ಹತ್ರ ಇರೋ DNA 50% ತಗೊಂಡು ಅದು ಫ್ಯೂಸ್ ಆಗಿ ಇದೊಂಥರ 100% DNA ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಎಂಟೈರ್ಲಿ ಡಿಫ್ರೆಂಟ್. The two different individuals in a population would have quite different patterns of accumulated variations. Combining variations from two or more individuals would create new combinations of variants. ನೋಡಿ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ರೆಡ್ ಕಲರ್ ಇದೆ, ಇವ್ರದ್ದೊಂಥರ ಮೆಟರ್ನಲ್ಲು, ಇದು ಪೆಟರ್ನಲ್. ಮೆಟರ್ನಲ್ ಇಸ್ ಮದರ್, ಪೆಟರ್ನಲ್ ಇಸ್ ಫಾದರ್. ಐ ಆಮ್ ನಾಟ್ ಟಾಕಿಂಗ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ಹ್ಯೂಮನ್ ಬೀಯಿಂಗ್ಸ್, ಎಲ್ಲ ಆರ್ಗ್ಯಾನಿಸಮ್ಸ್ಗೂ. ಓಕೆ ನೋಡಿ, ಈ ಥರ ಮಿಕ್ಸ್ ಆಗಿದಾಗ ಇಟ್ ಕಂಬೈನ್ಸ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ಸ್ ಟು ಡಿಫ್ರೆಂಟ್. ಎಷ್ಟು ಡಿಫ್ರೆಂಟ್ ಆಗಿದೆ, ರೆಡ್ಡು ಇದೆ, ಬ್ಲೂ ಇದೆ. ಎರಡೂ ಕಂಬೈನ್ ಆದಾಗ ಇಲ್ಲೊಂದು ಅರ್ಧಂಬರ್ಧ ರೆಡ್ಡು, ಇಲ್ಲ ಅರ್ಧಂಬರ್ಧ ಬ್ಲೂ ಎಲ್ಲ ಮಿಕ್ಸ್ ಆಗಿ ಅದೇ ಡಿಫ್ರೆಂಟ್ ಆಗೋಯ್ತು. ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಆಸ್. ನಾವು ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಮುಂಚೆ ನಾವು ಹ್ಯೂಮನ್ ಅಥವಾ ಆ್ಯನಿಮಲ್ ರಿಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ ಹೋಗೋಕ್ಕೆ ಮುಂಚೆ ಲೆಟ್ ಅಸ್ ಗೋ ಫಾರ್ ದ ರಿಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್, sexual reproduction in plants, that is with the flowers. Flower. You all have seen hibiscus flower, plants of flower, parts of a flower. You can see here different parts. ಈ ಕೆಳಗಿಂದ let us go from down. You see a stalk, ಕಡ್ಡಿ ಥರ ಇದೆ, ಸ್ಟಾಕ್ ಇದೆ, ಅದನ್ನು ಪೆಡಿಕಲ್ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. ಅದಾದಮೇಲೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಉಬ್ಬಕ್ಕೊಂದು 5 ಎಲೆ ಸ್ಮಾಲ್ ಗ್ರೀನ್ ಲೀವ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ, ಅದನ್ನು ಸೆಪಲ್ ಅಂತೀವಿ. ಈ ಸೆಪಲ್ದು ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ಪಾರ್ಟು ಬಡ್ಡಿದ್ದಾಗ, ಮೊಗ್ಗಿದ್ದಾಗ ಮುಚ್ಕೊಂಡಿರುತ್ತಲ್ಲ, ಅದೇ ಸೆಪಲ್. ಅದಾದಮೇಲೆ ಇಯರ್ ಯು ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಸಿ ಕಲರ್ಫುಲ್ ಪೆಟಲ್ಸ್, ಕಲರ್ಫುಲ್ ಆಗಿರೋ ಪೆಟಲ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ. ಅದಾದಮೇಲೆ ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಚರ್ ಇದೆ, ಒಂದು ಲಾಂಗ್ ಟ್ಯೂಬ್ ಉಬ್ಕೊಂಡಿರೋದು, ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ವಿ ಕಾಲ್ ಇಟ್ ಆ್ಯಸ್ ಸ್ಟೈಲ್ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. ಅದನ್ನು ಪೂರ್ತಿ ಪಾರ್ಟ್ನ ವಿ ಕಾಲ್ ಇಟ್ ಆ್ಯಸ್ ಸ್ಟೈಲ್ ಅಂತ. ದಟ್ ಸ್ಟೈಲ್ ಇಸ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ದ ಫೀಮೇಲ್ ರಿಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಟಿವ್ ಆರ್ಗನ್. ದ ಪ್ಲಾಂಟ್ಸ್ ಫೀಮೇಲ್ ರಿಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಟಿವ್ ಆರ್ಗನ್ ಇಸ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಸ್ಟೈಲ್. ಲೇಡೀಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಸ್ಟೈಲ್ ಅಲ್ವಾ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಸ್ಟೈಲ್ ಅಂತ ಹೆಸರಿಟ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಸ್ಟೈಲ್. The female reproductive organ is called, in a plant, in a flower, is called style. The female reproductive organ in a flower is called style. What does style has? Style has 3 different parts. That is, pistil, I got confused. The female reproductive organ in a flower is called pistil. Pistil has 3 important parts. First one is, in the top you can see stigma. This is stigma. After that, a long tube structure is called style. That long tube structure is connected to ovary. That is called ovary. So these 3 parts together forms pistil. The female reproductive part of a flower is called pistil. And pistil has stigma, style, ovary. Name the female reproductive part of a flower. The female reproductive part of a flower is pistil. It contains stigma, style and ovary. Now let us come to the left side, male reproductive part. There you can see yellow color something a long tube and something bulb-like structure. It is called as stamen. The male reproductive part of a flower is called stamen. It is called as stamen. Stamen, it has two parts. Tube-like structure is called filament, and the bulb-like structure is called anther. Anther and filament. The male reproductive part of a flower is called stamen. Stamen consists of filament and anther. Don't forget this. What is the female reproductive part? Pistil. Pistil consists of stigma, style, ovary. What is the male reproductive part of a flower? Stamen. Stamen consists of anther and filament. Okay. Now, what is this pollen tube? This pollen tube only comes if the male and female gametes fuse together. What is that? Let us see. Function of sepals. Sepals serve the purpose of protection at the time of the bud stage from infection or any other harm to the flower from any external agent, and also serves the purpose of providing starch to the flower by the process of photosynthesis. See, this is the work of the sepal. Function of petals. Enikirbodu color petals irutte flower ge. Yaake heli? Petals are sometimes very colorful and also scented so as to attract insects for pollination or any other creatures towards them, so that these creatures become the medium for the transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma, which will result in fertilization. What is this pollen grains? What is this pollination? Now, parts of unisexual flower ನೋಡೋಣ. ನೋಡಿ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಡೀಫ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸ್ಟೆಮನ್ನು ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಹೇಳ್ದೆ ನಾನು. ನೋಡಿ, ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಎಸ್ ಪಿಸ್ಟಲ್, ಸ್ಟಿಗ್ಮಾ, ಸ್ಟೈಲ್, ovary, ovule. This is called female structure. This is male structure. That is anther and filament. This is the two different parts of carpel ಅಥವಾ pistil ಅಂತಾನು ಕರಿತೀವಿ. Next. Stamen is the male reproductive part which produces pollen grains that are yellowish in color. See, nodi, a ಮೇಲ್ಗಡೆ anther ಮೇಲೆ ಸಣ್ಣ ರಾಳ್ಗಳ. If you touch a flower, you can feel it. It is somewhat very like very small granules like structure you can feel. That is called pollen grains. See, yellowish in color. Carpel. Carpel is the female reproductive part present in the center of the flower. It is made up of three parts: ovary, style and stigma. It is also called pistil or carpel. Next, unisexual flower. Papaya, watermelon. Unisexual flower andre which has only like female flower bere, male flower bere. It is like that. ಬೈಸೆಕ್ಷುವಲ್ ಫ್ಲವರ್ ಅಂದರೆ ಅದರಲ್ಲೇ ಎರಡೂ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಫಾರ್ ಹೈಬಿಸ್ಕಸ್ಸು ಮೇಲ್ ರಿಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಟಿವ್ ಆರ್ಗನ್ನು ಅದರಲ್ಲೇ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಫೀಮೇಲ್ ರಿಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಟಿವ್ ಆರ್ಗನ್ನು ಅದರಲ್ಲೇ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಆದರೆ ಯೂನಿಸೆಕ್ಷುವಲಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ, ಒಂದು ಒನ್ ವಿಲ್ ಬಿ ಮೇಲ್ ಫ್ಲವರ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಒನ್ ವಿಲ್ ಬಿ ಫೀಮೇಲ್ ಫ್ಲವರ್. ವೆರಾಸ್ bisexual flower, they have both in them only. Unisexual versus bisexual. Unisexual flower, the flower contain only one type of reproductive organ. They contain either stamens or carpel. Papaya and watermelon. Bisexual flower, they contain both type of reproductive organ. They contain both stamens and carpels in the same flower. Example, hibiscus and mustard. What is pollination? ಈಗ ಈ ಸ್ಟೇಮನ್ ಅಂದರೆ ಮೇಲ್ ರಿಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಟಿವ್ ಆರ್ಗನ್ನು ಪೋಲನ್ ಗ್ರೇನ್ಸ್ನ ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದೆ. ಆ ಪೋಲನ್ ಗ್ರೇನ್ಸು ಫೀಮೇಲ್ ರಿಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಟಿವ್ ಆರ್ಗನ್ ಸ್ಟಿಗ್ಮಾ ಮೇಲೆ ಹೋಗಿ ಕೂತ್ಕೋಬೇಕು. ಅದನ್ನು ವಿ ಕಾಲ್ ಇಟ್ as pollination. What is pollination? Transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigma is called pollination. Male reproductive organ in the female reproductive organ ge pollen grains pass on, we call it as pollination. Transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma is called pollination. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು self pollination ಇದೆ, ಇನ್ನೊಂದು cross pollination. The pollination of a flower by pollen from the same flower or another flower on the same plant. ಒಂದೇ ಪ್ಲಾಂಟಲ್ಲಿ ಇರೋ ಫ್ಲವರ್ಸ್ ಮಧ್ಯೆ if pollination occurs, that is called self pollination. ಅದೇ ಫ್ಲವರಲ್ಲಿರೋ ಸ್ಟೇಮನ್ pollen grains are passed on to same flower stigma, or the same plant flower only, the differences happens, we call it as self pollination. Whereas transfer of pollen grains of a flower to the stigma of another flower of a different plant, not the same plant, different plant, this is called as cross pollination. If two different flowers are there, if pollination happens between these two flowers of the same plant, it is called self pollination. Whereas two different plants and two flowers pollination happens, we call it as cross pollination. Self pollination versus cross pollination. It is transfer of pollen to stigma of the same flower. It is a transfer of pollen to stigma of another flower. See the difference, you can read it here. Go through it, read detailedly. I want you to read loud once. Once, can you read it once? Just go through that. Read it once. So, agents of pollination. The agents of pollination are wind, water or animals. See, insects or water or animals, wind passes this pollen grains. So, fertilization. The fusion of male gamete with egg is known as fertilization. Male gamete fuses with the egg nucleus to form the male gamete fuses with the two polar nuclei to form the triploid endosperm nucleus. The stigma, from stigma, as soon as the pollen grains enter stigma, the pollen tube starts growing towards the ovary. That is called as fertilization. See, post fertilization, the ovules develop a tough coat and converts into seeds. The ovary grows rapidly and ripens to form fruit. Ovary becomes fruit. Inside that ovary there are small granules called as ovules, and that become seeds. This is germination. The process in which seed develops into a seedling under appropriate condition is called germination. The parts of seed are cotyledons containing plumule and radicle, that is future shoot and future root. Now I was talking about agents of pollination like wind, water or animals. Sometimes the wind blows and takes all these pollen grains from one flower to another plant or another flower. Sometimes water flows and it takes raindrops falls and that goes with somewhere and this pollination occurs. Sometimes animals like insects or humans or cattle, they take this pollen grains from one part. You can see why the flowers are colorful, to attract insects. You can see the bees or the flowers, they go for the nectar, to observe, to take the nectar from the flower. When they sit, they won't be sitting one place, they will not sit and take. They'll be moving, they'll be sitting, jumping, moving, sitting. When they do that, the pollen grains are attached to its body. It's, for example, bee, if I take an example of bees wings or legs, and again they will go and sit on stigma, then the pollen grains are transferred. So these are the agents. Abiotic agents are wind and water. Biotic agents are animals. Animals like mammals, reptiles, birds and insects. Next, fertilization. The fusion of a male gamete with egg is known as fertilization. Male gamete to female gamete fuse ಆದರೆ male reproductive cell and female reproductive cell combines together. Plants ಅಲ್ಲಿ male reproductive cell na we call it as ovules. Ovary is called as egg ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ. Whereas in male reproductive cells are called as pollen grains. The ovules develop after fertilization. Now once the fertilization happened, the male pollen grain has fused with female egg. They both come fuse together and it forms a new organism, starts to grow, and that full ovary becomes a fruit. ಹಣ್ಣಾಗತ್ತದು, ಹೂವು ಉದ್ರಿ ಹಣ್ಣಾಗತ್ತೆ. that fruit ಒಳಗಡೆ small granules becomes, ovules become seed. See, like this. What is ಅದಾಯಿತು? ನಾವು ಸೀಡ್ನ ತಗೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀವಿ. Seed, sometimes we grow with seeds putting it in the soil. The process in which seed containing the future plant or embryo develops into a seedling under appropriate condition is called germination. That we call it as germination. Soak a few seeds of Bengal gram and keep them overnight. Drain the excess water and cover the seeds with a wet cloth and leave them for a day. Make sure that the seeds do not become dry. Cut open the seeds carefully and observe. ಯಾವುದು ಬೇಡ, ಅಮ್ಮ ಮೊಳಕೆ ಕಾಳು ಕಟ್ಟಿರ್ತಾರೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾ ಸಾರು ಮಾಡೋಕ್ಕೆ, ಅದನ್ನು ತೆಗೆದು ನೋಡಿ ನಿಮಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ. The parts of seed are cotyledons containing, ಈ ಒಂದು ಸೀಡ್ಸ್ನ ಎರಡು ಪಾರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಅದೇನು ಸೀಡ್ ಕೋಟ್ನ ತೆಗೆದ್ರೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಚರ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ cotyledon. It is called as cotyledon. What is this cotyledon? ನೀವು ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ 9th ಓದಿರಬೇಕು, ಮೊನೊಕಾಟ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಡೈಕಾಟ್. ಇಫ್ ಅ ಸೀಡ್ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ ಒನ್ ಪಾರ್ಟ್ ವಿಚ್ ಇಸ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಆಸ್ ಮೊನೊಕಾಟ್. ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್, ಇಫ್ ಯು ಅಬ್ಸರ್ವ್ ಆ್ಯಪಲ್ ಸೀಡು, ಮುಸಂಬಿ ಸೀಡ್ ಆರ್ ಆರೆಂಜ್ ಸೀಡ್, papaya seed, they are all monocots. Whereas mango seed, groundnut seed, those are all dicot. Monocot, dicot. See here, it has all the parts. Seed coat is there, immature leaves, radicle which becomes shoot, and cotyledon is the name. Now, plumule, future shoot, and radicle, future root. Now, let's go to the sexual reproduction in humans. I know when I talk about this lesson only, you people are very much interested. Oh, ma'am is going to do sexual reproduction lesson, and you guys are very much, oh, some of them may feel how to listen to this, and some of them, let us see how interesting it will be. Yeah, I know it happens in this age, all this curiosity and what all masalas somebody have told you or you have seen in the movies. Nowadays everything is open and it is so thing, so you might have had all the different ideas, but actually it is how I would like to start. How did you come to earth? You all know that you were in your mother's womb. You all go to temple, right? You go to temple or church or masjid, wherever you go. You know, inside the temple where the god is placed, we call it as Garbhagudi. No? Same way, we are in our mother's womb, like in a temple for 9 months. Garbha is the ovary, what you call it as womb. What you call it as womb. You are in mother's womb for 9 months. That womb, it is like a temple. You are in temple, and mother, she goes through hell holding it. For example, imagine children, you go to some function, you eat so many varieties you like, and you are very hungry, you eat nicely, your stomach is full, but still you like that jamun, sweets and all, you still eat ice cream, everything you eat. Last they will bring ice cream, you are already full, you don't want eat anything, but still you make some place for ice cream and eat it off. After if you come out and somebody tells you, see, I have brought a chocolate cake for you, come and eat, will you be interested? You are already overfull, you can't get up, you go to some function and eat something uncontrollably, your stomach is full, you will suffer so much, you can't sit, you can't stand, you are some uneasiness extra, ಒಂದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ತಿಂದಿದ್ದಕ್ಕೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ತಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ. Imagine a small baby inside the mother's womb, she carries, and how her other organs will be suppressed. As the baby grows, all her organs will be pressed, and how she should be feeling. And our mother, she does all the work carrying us. She carries pot of pitcher of water, ಬಿಂದಿಗೆ ಎತ್ತುತ್ತಾರೆ, ಬಗ್ಗಿ ಒರೆಸ್ತಾರೆ, ಕಸ ಗುಡಿಸ್ತಾರೆ, ಅಡುಗೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಮೆಟ್ಲು ಎಲ್ಲ ಕೆಲಸ ಕ್ಯಾರಿಯಿಂಗರ್ಸ್. ನಾವು ಒಂಚೂರು ಹೊಟ್ಟೆ ತುಂಬಿದ್ರೆ ಕೂತ್ರೆ ಎದೊಳಲ್ಲ, ಎದ್ದರೆ ಕೂತ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಲ್ಲ. ವಿ ಕಾಂಟ್ ಗೆಟ್ ಅಪ್, ವಿ cannot sit down. But mothers does so many things. They sacrifice a hell and they go through. And during our birth, it is once a time some 20-25 bones breaking together. Ashtu pain agate. Let's go for the sexual reproduction in humans. Before that I go for that sexual reproduction, when an organism is formed, all the organs are already formed. When a baby is born, all the organisms are already formed, but reproductive organs are still not developed. It starts developing when boy or girl. For girls, when she reaches 11, it starts to grow. When boy reaches 12 to 14, it will grow. For girls, from 11 to 14 it grows, whereas for boys it grows from 12 to 15, something like that. Changes that are noticed in boys in early teenage, that is puberty, that's the starting of development of reproductive organs, is called puberty. ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಅದನ್ನು ಹೆಣ್ಮಕ್ಳಿಗೆ ಮೆಚ್ಯೂರ್ ಆಗೋದು ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ. ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಸಮ್ವಾಟ್ ಲೈಕ್ ಆಲ್ ದ ಬಾಡಿ ಫಿಸಿಕಲ್ ಸೆಕೆಂಡರಿ ಸೆಕ್ಷುಯಲ್ ಕ್ಯಾರೆಕ್ಟರಿಸ್ಟಿಕ್ಸ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಗ್ರೋ ಆಗೋಕ್ಕೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ಬಾಡಿಲಿ ರಿಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಟಿವ್ ಆರ್ಗನ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ, ಬಟ್ ಅದು ಇನ್ನೂ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಪು ಗ್ರೋತ್ ಆಗಿರಲ್ಲ ಹುಟ್ಟಿದಾಗ. ಸೊ ಒನ್ಸ್ ವಿ ರೀಚ್ ದಿಸ್ ಏಜ್ ಆಫ್ 10 years or 12 years, ಇಟ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಗ್ರೋ. ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಡಿಫ್ರೆಂಟ್ ಇನ್ ಈಚ್ ಆಫ್ ಅಸ್. ಒಂದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಸ್ಲೈಟ್ ಚೇಂಜಸ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. Thick hair growing in armpits and genital area between the thighs. The area between thighs also become thicker, darker in color. Thinner hair can also appear on legs and arms. Thick hair growth on the face. Gadda mise beliyake start agate. The skin becomes oily and might begin develop pimple ella barak start agate. Their voice begin to crack. Idu boys alli nododu puberty changes. Next, girls alli thick hair growing in armpits and genital area between the thighs. The area between thighs also become darker in color. Thinner hair also appear on legs and arms. Kai kalli barte. The skin frequently becomes oily and might begin to develop pimples, and mainly to feed the future baby, the breast size starts to increase. It starts to develop. They begin to menstruate at around this time. Why does the body show sexual maturation at teenage? Human beings develop special tissues for the purpose of reproduction. While the body of the individual organism is growing to its adult size, the resources of the body are mainly directed at achieving their growth. The maturation of the reproductive tissue is not likely to be a major priority. As the rate of general body growth begins to slow down, reproductive tissue begins to mature. Puberty. What is puberty? The period during adolescence which marks the attainment of sexual maturity is called puberty. Boys and girls attain puberty at an age of 10 to 12 years madhyadalli avarge start agutte. Male reproductive system. The male reproductive system consists of structure which produce the germ cells, structure to deliver the germ cells to the site of fertilization. The germ cell of male. The germ cell is nothing but reproductive cell. Reproductive cell, gamete, germ cell. These are all reproductive cells of, is called as germ cell, gametes or reproductive cells. Male, now plant nodidvi, male reproductive cell is called as pollen grains. Whereas in humans, the germ cells of male are called sperms. Sperms are the reproductive cells of males. The sperms are tiny bodies that consist of mainly genetic material and a long tail that helps them to move towards the female germ cell. The formation of germ cells or sperms takes place in testes. You can see the germ cell, how it is the body structure, nucleus, and it has a tail where it helps to in the movement. Next is testes. Testes are the male reproductive structures that form the germ cells or sperms. Functions of testes is produce male sex cells, that is sperms, produce male sex hormone testosterone. Next, function of testosterone. Testosterone helps in regulating the formation of sperms. ಇದೆಲ್ಲೋ ಕೇಳಿದೀವಿ ಅಲ್ವಾ? You remember testosterone? Endocrine glands, when I was doing, you remember, in males, it is testosterone I had told you. Testosterone brings about changes in appearance in boys at the time of puberty. Next, why are the testes located outside the abdominal cavity? Testes are located outside the abdominal cavity in scrotum because sperm formation requires a lower temperature than the body normal temperature. Cold ಇರಬೇಕು, ಅದು ತುಂಬ ಹಾಟ್ ಇರಬಾರ್ದು. ಸೊ ಬಾಡಿ ಒಳಗಡೆ ಇದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ರೆ it will be very hot. So it is separately there. The testes lie in a skin pouch called scrotum. How are the sperms delivered to outside the body? The sperms formed in the testes are delivered through the vas deferens, which unites with a tube coming from the urinary bladder. Vas deferens is the tube which carries sperms to the seminal vesicle. ಈ testes ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಆಗಿರೋ ಸ್ಪರ್ಮ್ಸ್ನ ಒಂದು ಆಚೆ ಇದು ಸೆಮೈನಲ್ ವೆಸಿಕಲ್ಗೆ ಪಾಸ್ ಮಾಡೋದನ್ನು ವಿ ಕಾಲ್ ಇಟ್ ಆಸ್ ವಾಸ್ ಡಿಫರೆನ್ಸ್. ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟರ್ಸ್ ಅಫೆಕ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಸ್ಪರ್ಮ್ಸ್. Not necessary. Next, seminal vesicle is the place where sperms are stored. Secretions from seminal vesicles provide nutrition to the sperms and make their transport easier by providing them a fluid medium. Prostate gland. Prostate gland provides nutrition and helps in the transport of sperms. Penis. It is an organ which passes the sperms from the man body into the vagina in the woman's body during sexual intercourse. Now, female reproductive system. Female germ cells are called eggs. Female germ cells or eggs are produced in the ovaries. Female reproductive system. So, female, I told you, if you remember, female germ cells, male germ cells or male reproductive cells or male gametes are called sperms. Female germ cells or female reproductive cells or female gametes are called eggs. Eggs are produced in the ovaries. Female reproductive system consists of a pair of ovaries, a pair of oviducts or fallopian tube, uterus or vagina. See, here you can see two ovaries are there, pair. In between is uterus, there is vagina. Oviduct or fallopian tube. First let us know about. Ovaries are a pair of female reproductive glands in which eggs or ova are formed or produced. Oviduct or fallopian tube is a tube which receives egg. Egg ovary ready agiddu, it will come to fallopian tube to come to uterus barakke fallopian tube mulka barta irutte and transfer it to the uterus. Uterus is a bag like structure. Womb anta ಏನು ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ, ನಾನು ದೇವಸ್ಥಾನ ಗರ್ಭಗುಡಿ ಗರ್ಭ ಅಂತ ಏನು ಹೇಳಿದೆ ಅದು. Uterus is a bag-like structure where the two oviducts unite and development of the baby takes place. Nodi, this is called as uterus. Vagina. So, where the female reproductive part outside it goes, it is called as vagina. Now, cervix. The uterus is connected to the vagina through a narrow opening called cervix. Now, fertilization. The process of fusion of male gamete, that is sperm, with the female gamete, that is ovum, of the same species is known as fertilization. The fusion of male gamete and female gamete is called fertilization. What do you call it as? Fertilization. Fusion of male and female gamete is called fertilization. The process of fertilization takes place in the fallopian tube or of females in a fallopian tube ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. How does the embryo get nourishment inside the mother's body? ಯಾವಾಗ male gamete female gamete fuse together in the fallopian tube, the first cell is formed, that is called zygote. The male gamete sperm fuses with the female. The fusion of male gamete sperm with the female gamete ovum or egg gives rise to zygote. That is the first cell of a new organism. The embryo gets nutrition from the mother's blood with the help of special tissue called zygote form ಆಯಿತು. Zygote form ಆಗಿ immediate ಆಗಿ it starts dividing into cells. It becomes a ball of cells which is called as blastocyst. First it is zygote, zygote it becomes blastocyst. Blastocyst ಆದಮೇಲೆ it becomes morula ಆಗಿ it comes to womb ಅಥವಾ ಯುಟಿರಸ್ಸಿಗೆ ಬಂದು ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಆ ವಾಲ್ಗೆ ಅಟ್ಯಾಚ್ ಆಗಿಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ. ಅಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಗ್ರೋತ್ ಆಗಕ್ಕೆ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅಟ್ಯಾಚ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದ ಜಾಗ, ಮದರ್ ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಅಟ್ಯಾಚ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದ ಪ್ಲೇಸ್, ವಿ ಕಾಲ್ ಇಟ್ ಆಸ್ ದಟ್ ಬಿಕಮ್ಸ್ ಪ್ಲಾಸೆಂಟಾ. The embryo gets nutrition from mother's blood with the help of special tissue called placenta. This is a disc-like tissue which develops between the uterine wall and embryo. It has a villi on the embryo side of the tissue. On the mother's side are blood spaces with the villi. This gives a large surface area of oxygen and glucose to pass from mother to embryo. Placenta. Placenta is a special tissue that develops in the uterus during pregnancy. It provides oxygen and nutrition to the growing baby and removes waste products from the baby's blood. See, that is placenta, and this is the cervix. See how the baby is growing in mother's womb. What happens when the egg is ಆಯಿತು, ಎಗ್ ರಿಲೀಸ್ ಆಯಿತು, ಸ್ಪರ್ಮ್ ಬಂತು, ಫರ್ಟಿಲೈಸ್ ಆಯಿತು. ಎಗ್ ಫರ್ಟಿಲೈಸ್ ಆಗದೇ ಇದ್ದರೆ, ಸ್ಪರ್ಮ್ ಇಸ್ ನಾಟ್ ದೇರ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ದ ಎಗ್ ಇಸ್ ನಾಟ್ ಫರ್ಟಿಲೈಸ್ಡ್. ಒನ್ಸ್ ದ ಎಗ್ ಇಸ್ ದೇರ್, ಇಟ್ ವಿಲ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ ಬಿ ದೇರ್ ಫಾರ್ 2-3 days. ಇಫ್ ದ ಸ್ಪರ್ಮ್ ಡಸ್ ನಾಟ್ ಕಮ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಫರ್ಟಿಲೈಸ್, ದೆನ್ ದ ಎಗ್. If the egg is not fertilized, it lives for about 1 day. The lining of the uterus slowly breaks and comes out through the vagina as a blood and mucus. One more thing I didn't tell you, menstruation. What is menstruation? See, menstruation. Menstruation is the regular discharge of blood and mucus tissue from the lining of the uterus. This I'll tell you, just imagine children, uterus is there. Now egg is released. Egg ಏನು ರಿಲೀಸ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅನ್ನೋವಾಗ, ಈಗ ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಇಫ್ ಯು ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಅಬ್ಸರ್ವ್ಡ್ ಬರ್ಡ್ಸ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಅದರ್ ಆ್ಯನಿಮಲ್ಸ್, ಬಿಫೋರ್ ಲೇಯಿಂಗ್ ಎಗ್ ವಾಟ್ ದೇ ಡೂ, ದೇ ಪ್ರಿಪೇರ್, ರೈಟ್, ನೆಸ್ಟ್ನ ಪ್ರಿಪೇರ್ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ ಎಗ್ನ ಲೇ ಮಾಡೋಕ್ಕೆ. ಸೇಮ್ ವೇ ಅವರ್ ಬಾಡಿ ಆಲ್ಸೋ, in our body, in humans also, in the mother's body, the nest starts to form. ನೆಸ್ಟ್ ಯಾವ ಥರದಲ್ಲಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಇನ್ಸೆಕ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಆದರೆ ಕಡ್ಡಿ ಕಸ ಎಲ್ಲ ಈ ನೆಸ್ಟ್. ನಾವು ಬಾಡಿ ಒಳಗಡೆ ಹಿಂಗೆ ಬ್ಲಡ್ಡು ಮತ್ತು ಟಿಶ್ಯೂಸಿಂದ ನೆಸ್ಟ್ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಆ ವೂಂಬಲ್ಲಿ ಇಫ್ ಯು ರಿಮೆಂಬರ್, ನೀವು ಯುಟರಸ್ನ ನೆನಪಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ ನೋಡಿ, ಇಲ್ಲಿದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಇದು ಈ ಥರ ಬ್ಲಡ್ಡು ಮತ್ತು ಟಿಶ್ಯೂಸಿಂದ ಒಂದು ಲೇಯರ್ ನೆಸ್ಟ್ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಮಗುಗೆ ಏನೂ ತೊಂದರೆ ಆಗದಿರ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಈಸಿಯಾಗಿ ಸಪೋರ್ಟಾಗಿ ಸಾಫ್ಟಾಗಿ ಜಾಗ ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ. ಈ ಫಾರ್ಮೇಷನ್ ಆಫ್ ಬ್ಲಡ್ is called as endometrium wall ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ ಇದನ್ನು. This is called as endometrium wall. The lining of blood to preparation of the preparation of the embryo is called endometrium wall. So that endometrium wall has already formed. Once the sperm comes, fertilization happens and embryo comes and attaches. If in case the egg does not fertilize, then what happens? This lining of the blood, it starts depleting, kargak start agi drop by drop ಈಚೆ ಕಡೆ ಹೊಟ್ಟೋಗುತ್ತೆ in the form of blood, waste blood ಆಗಿ ಅದು ಈಚೆ ಕಡೆ ಹೊಟ್ಟೋಗುತ್ತೆ. ಇದನ್ನೇ ಮೆನ್ಸ್ಚುರೇಷನ್ ಅನ್ನೋದು. ನಾವೆಲ್ಲ ಗರ್ಲ್ಸಲ್ಲಿ 10 to 14 years ಮಧ್ಯೆ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ದೊಡ್ಡೋಳಾಗಿದ್ದಾಳೆ ಅಂತಾರೆ, ಮೆಚ್ಯೂರ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದಾಳೆ ಅಂತಾಳೆ. ಇದು ಎವ್ರಿ ಮಂತ್ ಇಟ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಹ್ಯಾಪನಿಂಗ್. ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ದ ಪ್ರಾಸೆಸ್. ಅಂದರೆ ಮೆಚ್ಯೂರ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂದರೆ ದೇ ಆರ್ ನಾಟ್ ರೆಡಿ ಫಾರ್ ಟು ಕ್ಯಾರಿ ದ ಬೇಬಿ. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅವರ ಬಾಡಿ ಡೆವಲಪ್ ಆಗ್ತಿದೆ. 20-22 ವರ್ಷ ತನಕ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ದೆನ್ ದೇ ಆರ್ ರೆಡಿ ಫಾರ್ ಬೇರಿಂಗ್ ದ ಚಿಲ್ಡ್ರನ್ ಅಂತ. The cycle of events take place in the ovaries and the uterus every 28 days and marked by the menstrual flow is known as menstrual cycle. Menstruation is the regular discharge of blood and mucosal tissue from the inner lining of the uterus. ಎಂಡೋಮೆಟ್ರಿಯಮ್ ವಾಲ್ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಯಾವಾಗ ಫರ್ಟಿಲೈಸ್ ಆಗಲಿಲ್ಲ, ಇದು ಬೇಕಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಅದು ಕರಗಕ್ಸ್, ಇಟ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಟು ಡಿಪ್ಲೀಟ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಕಮ್ ಔಟ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಬಾಡಿ. ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಆಸ್ ಮೆನ್ಸ್ಟ್ರುಯೇಷನ್. So you know what is menstruation. First time menstruation ಆಗೋದು, ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ 10 to 12 years ಮಧ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಆಗುತ್ತಾ, ದ್ಯಾಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಮೆನಾರ್ಕ್ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. ಆದರೆ ಅದು ವುಮೆನ್ ಇರೋ ತನಕ ಇರಲ್ಲ. ಅವ್ರಿಗೊಂದು 50 ವರ್ಷ ಆದಾಗ ಈ ಮೆನ್ಸ್ಟ್ರುಯೇಷನ್ ಸ್ಟಾಪ್ ಆಗೋಗ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ. ಆವಾಗ ಆಮೇಲೆ ಅವ್ರು ದೇ ಕೆನಾಟ್ ರಿಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಬೇಬೀಸ್. ಸೊ ಆ ಒಂದು ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ ಮೆನ್ಸ್ಟ್ರುಯೇಷನ್ ವಿ ಕಾಲ್ ಇಟ್ ಆಸ್ ಮೆನೋಪಾಸ್ ಅಂತೀವಿ. ಈ ಮೆನಾರ್ಕ್ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಒನ್ನು, ಮೆನೋಪಾಸ್ ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ ಒನ್ನು, ದ ಬಿಟ್ವೀನ್ ಇಸ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಆಸ್ ಮೆನ್ಸ್ಟ್ರುಯಲ್ ಸೈಕಲ್. The menstrual cycle is a cycle which happens from the menarche to menopause. Now next, sexually transmitted diseases. The diseases which are spread by sexual contact with an infected person are called sexually transmitted disease, that is called STDs. Bacterial infections such as gonorrhea and syphilis, viral infections such as warts and HIV/AIDS, sexually transmitted diseases. ಅದು ವೆರಿ ಕೇರ್ಫುಲ್ ಆಗಿರಬೇಕು. ಸೊ ಆ ಸೆಕ್ಷುವಲಿಂದನೂ ತುಂಬ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಡಿಸೀಸಸ್ಸು ಆಗೋ ಚಾನ್ಸಸ್. Now, every month I told you egg is produced. Do you think every month women can have a baby? No. You remember? You and your sibling, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಅಣ್ಣ ಅಕ್ಕ ತಮ್ಮಿ ಅವ್ರ ಮಧ್ಯೆ 2 ವರ್ಷ 3 ವರ್ಷ 4 ವರ್ಷ ಡಿಫ್ರೆನ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ. ಹೆಂಗಾಯ್ತದು? Here the parents can control of the baby not forming. The prevention of pregnancy in women by preventing fertilization is called contraception. ಯಾವುದೇ ಕಾರಣಕ್ಕೂ sperm and woman do not ಫ್ಯೂಷನ್ ಆಗಬಾರ್ದು. ಆ ಫರ್ಟಿಲೈಸೇಷನ್ ಆಗದೆ ಇರೋದೇ ಕಂಟ್ರೋಲ್, ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಆಸ್ ಕಾಂಟ್ರಸೆಪ್ಷನ್. ಮೆಥಡ್ಸ್ ಯೂಸ್ ಫಾರ್ ಬರ್ತ್ ಕಂಟ್ರೋಲ್, ಬೇಬಿ ಆಗದೆ ಇರೋಂಗೆ ಮಧ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಗ್ಯಾಪ್ ಕೊಡಬೇಕು ಅಂದಾಗ ಬ್ಯಾರಿಯರ್ ಮೆಥಡ್, ಆ ಸ್ಪರ್ಮ್ ಬಾಡಿ ಒಳಗಡೆ ಫಿಮೇಲ್ ಬಾಡಿ ಒಳಗಡೆ ಹೋಗದೆ ಇರೋದಂಗೆ, ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ದೇ ಯೂಸ್ ಕಾಂಡೋಮ್. ಕೆಮಿಕಲ್ ಮೆಥಡ್ ಅಂದರೆ ಡೈಲಿ ಟ್ಯಾಬ್ಲೆಟ್ಸ್ ತೊಗೋತಾರೆ. ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಸರ್ಜಿಕಲ್ ಮೆಥಡ್ ಅಂದರೆ ವ್ಯಾಸೆಕ್ಟಮಿ ಆರ್ ಟ್ಯೂಬೆಕ್ಟಮಿ. ಏನು ಫೆಲೋಪಿಯನ್ ಟ್ಯೂಬ್ನ ಕಟ್ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಟ್ಟು ಗಂಟಾಕ್ಬಿಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಅದನ್ನು ಟ್ಯೂಬೆಕ್ಟಮಿ ಅಂತಾರೆ. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ವಾಸ್ ಡಿಫರೆನ್ಸ್ನ ಕಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಗಂಟಾಕ್ತಾರೆ, ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಟ್ಯೂಬೆಕ್ಟಮಿ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಮಕ್ಕಳಾಗಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ದಿಸ್ ಈಸ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಆಸ್ ಕಾಂಟ್ರಸೆಪ್ಷನ್. ಪ್ರಿವೆನ್ಷನ್ ಆಫ್ ಪ್ರೆಗ್ನೆನ್ಸಿ ಈಸ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಕಾಂಟ್ರಸೆಪ್ಷನ್. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ 3 ಥರ: ಬ್ಯಾರಿಯರ್ ಮೆಥಡ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಕಾಂಡೋಮ್, ಕೆಮಿಕಲ್ ಮೆಥಡ್ ಓರಲ್ ಪಿಲ್ಸ್, ಸರ್ಜಿಕಲ್ ಮೆಥಡ್ ವ್ಯಾಸೆಕ್ಟಮಿ. In the barrier method of contraception, a mechanical barrier like condom is worn on the penis by men to prevent the sperm from reaching the vagina. Similar covering can also be worn in vagina. So this is barrier method. Next, chemical method. They are the tablets they take. See, oral pills daily tagotare. That is called as contracept. Next is contraceptive devices. ಮಕ್ಕಳಾಗದೇನೆ ಕಾಪರ್ ಟಿ ಅಂತ ಹಾಕ್ಸ್ಕೋತಾರೆ. ಆ ಓವರಿಗೆ they insert some copper tea like structure where the organism cannot grow. Other contraceptive devices such as loop or the copper tea are placed in the uterus to prevent pregnancy. Surgical methods ಅಂದರೆ ಹೇಳಿದ್ನಲ್ಲ, ಈ ಫೆಲೋಪಿಯನ್ ಟ್ಯೂಬ್ ಅಥವಾ ವ್ಯಾಸ್ ಡಿಫರೆನ್ಸ್ನ ಕಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದಕ್ಕೊಂದು ಪಾಸ್ ಆಗದೆ ಇರಂಗೆ ಮಾಡೋದನ್ನು, ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಆಸ್ ಕಾಂಟ್ರಸೆಪ್ಟಿವ್. What could be the reason for adopting contraceptive methods? The reason for adopting contraceptive methods are to avoid frequent pregnancy, which in turn helps in population control, to prevent the spread of sexually transmitted diseases. Other questions, let's go for some MCQs. Asexual and sexual reproduction difference nodi. Asexually, offspring arises from single parent. The production of new organism does not involve gametes. Example, amoeba yeast. Here, sexual reproduction, the offspring arises from 2 parents of 2 different sexes. The production of new organism involves in the use of gametes. Example, fish, frog, humans, etc. Vas difference is the part of male reproductive system. So, it helps sperms to reach the penis. Whereas fallopian tube is a female reproductive system. It tubes joins the uterus in family. Ovum from the ovary is passed on to ovum is passed on to uterus through fallopian tubes. Sperm versus ovum. Sperm, it is produced in testes. It is of male reproductive organ. It lakhs of sperms are formed continuously, capable of movement, has tail. Whereas ovum or egg, it is produced in ovary. Only 1 egg is formed in the menstrual cycle. Incapable of movement, does not have tail. Next, the diagram shows female reproductive system. Name the parts of labeled A and D. A is fallopian tube, B is ovary, C is uterus, D is vagina. See, oviduct, ovary, uterus, vagina. Next, in which part do the sperms enter? Vagina. Which part releases the egg? Ovary. Which part does fertilization takes place, that is oviduct or fallopian tube? Which part does the fetus develop? Uterus. Given below schematic section, name the parts 1 to 9. See, nodi. Ureter, vas deferens, scrotum, testes, urethra, penis, prostate gland, bladder, and seminal vesicle. MCQ is known. Asexual reproduction takes place through budding in yeast. Which of the following is not part of the female reproductive system in human beings? Vas deferens. The anther contains pollen grains. And so with this we completed the lesson sexual reproduction, how do organisms reproduce. So this is, your mother has really children. I tell you today, go home and talk to your mother and tell her, I now understood how much pain you have took. When you are born children, you are born, no? Then if it is normal delivery, your pain is equal to some together 20 bones breaking. One small pain, how much you will suffer. Altogether 20 bones breaking, that is the pain your mother take. And 9 months she carries you and she suffers so much. But today we stand and say, Enama ningen gotagate neen maha. So please be grateful to your parents. Because of them you are here. So show gratitude to your mother. Take care of her. I know when you go now and say, Mommy, I'll help you and all, she say, why, what happened? In normal agidya tane ದುಡ್ಡು ಬೇಕಾ? Why you are asking like this anta? But still you go and tell her, I got to know your sacrifice. I'm very grateful to you anta. Show your gratitude to your parents. So this is the lesson. Next I'll meet you in heredity and evolution. Thank you children. Take care.